Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the topic Charting New Horizons, Heather Enness's transition from offshore operations to sustainable maritime leadership. Today, we are thrilled to explore Heather's career journey from working primarily in the oil and gas sector to taking the decision to pursue a master's in sustainable maritime operations. I'm Arjun and I'm your host for today. I'm in the recruitment team for MLA College. We are specialists in distance learning programs and we offer programs across a host of domains with specialization in maritime as well as sustainability. We have a strategic partnership with the University of Plymouth, and our programs deliver industry relevant knowledge through cutting edge digital learning platforms. We're very honored to have our guest today, Heather, who is an experienced maritime professional with over 14 years of experience across various roles within maritime and other industries. She has held positions ranging from deck cadet to master mariner, with extensive experience in dredging, offshore operations, dynamic positioning, ship handling, and training. Her career demonstrates a blend of hands on maritime expertise, leadership, and a passion for mentoring and training future maritime professionals. So, welcome on board, Heather.
Hello.
Before we dive in, this is just a quick reminder to everyone that we're very keen to engage with you throughout the conversation. So if you have any views, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the question box above, and we'll be glad to tackle them as we go along. So, Heather, welcome to the webinar. How are you feeling today?
Nervous, obviously. Even though I can't see anyone other than yourself, it's always a bit nerve-wracking when you know that there's people watching. So, but otherwise, I'm
That's
good, thank you.
exactly.
How are you?
All good this side as well, Heather. We're glad to have you on board. And we just want to understand a bit about your maritime journey so far. Say, starting a bit at the beginning itself, in terms of why did you decide to pursue this profession?
Oh gosh, okay, that goes back a little bit. So I actually wanted to be an engineer in the Royal Navy. And so when I was applying for universities, the majority of my choices were engineering. But because I'd done work experience for Rolls-Royce when I was in year 11, I was actually working on a marine engine. And so I was also looking at prospectuses, and the keyword marine. So I came across Marine Studies and Navigation at Plymouth University, and I got accepted onto that. I got accepted onto other of the engineering ones too. And yeah, I went to the preview day, and they said, well, you could do navigation or you could do merchant shipping and go and basically join the merchant navy. So I kind of fell into it. I was sponsored through university. I got to do the sea time and what have you. So yeah, I kind of fell into it that way. And okay, I could have been an engineer in the merchant navy, but I didn't know. I didn't know what the merchant navy was. I knew what the Royal Navy was, of course, but never the merchant navy. So that's why these days, I go into schools to actually spread that word, so that people don't have to fall into the industry and they actually just know about the industry. So that's where it began, so at Plymouth University, which is why it's quite nice that it's kind of a little bit full circle. Like you say, you're partnered with Plymouth. So yeah, it's nice that that's the case.
Thank you for sharing that, Heather. That's a very interesting start, to be honest. Of course, not entirely charted out or well planned, but things falling into place over a period of time, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
if you
and I
don't
wouldn't, I
mind,
wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I did kind of think, well, I'll do the course and then I can still look at joining the Royal Navy. But no, the Merchant Navy, I've absolutely loved my career and continue to love my career. Very much so, and like it's just, I know the camaraderie might be more in the Royal Navy, and they get to have summer balls, but then there's also the flip reverse. You might have to go to war, but and I've still got to see some absolutely fantastic places, and through like networking and stuff, I've got to do amazing things as well, so yeah, I can't complain. And I certainly can't regret not going into the Royal Navy because I have loved the Merchant Navy and the maritime industry.
well, thank you so much for sharing that, Heather. It seems that you have extensive experience in maritime operations specifically. So, for those who perhaps may not be aware, could you shed more light on, say, what a DPO does? What sort of role does that involve?
Oh, it does. Okay. So, yeah, one of my many roles as you listed at the start there, like has been dynamic positioning. And so as a DPO, or a dynamic positioning operator, it's our job to, it's like a precise navigation. It's keeping the ship in one set point. So you mark your set point, and it's basically a massive integrated computer system that utilizes reference systems, and builds up a model as to where you want to be. So that's called your set point. So you know that you want to be right there. So, and obviously, like, the elements and the environment that can shift you off position. And so it knows that we're off position by a range and bearing, and so it then uses the propulsion, the thrusters, to get us back to that set point. And obviously it's critical, especially when you've got divers down, or what have you. So yeah, my job as a DPO would be to make sure that, I mean, it's staring at a lot of screens, but it's yeah, it's fun. It can be boring at times, because you might not be doing much other than like just keeping an eye on screens. But like, equally, when it starts going wrong, like, that's where you need to be on the ball and know exactly what's happened and how to fix it, and and what have you. So it's an interesting job, but that's just one of many roles that I've done. You know I'm new to dredging. I know you said I've got extensive, like, actually ship handling and dredging, brand new last trip. But I've done more in that just over 2 weeks that I was on board that trip, than I have done in a long time. Like, in terms of ship handling, especially given that I have been a DPO. So you don't tend to do the bringing in and out of ports, especially when you're out in the North Sea and you're not actually coming into port that much. So yeah, it's been amazing few months actually for me, even though I've only just come back off maternity leave. So
Oh, fascinating, Heather. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, a relevant question I have to that is that what exactly motivated you to return back to work after your leave?
well, other than money, and wanting to have a break from the children, no, I am very career driven, which is crazy given that I've got 4 children, because it kind of almost doesn't go hand in hand, especially with a career at sea. But I guess I am proof that either I'm as mad as a box of frogs, or that I actually can be done. Like, so what motivated me to go back? Um, Providing for the family. But why do we all have jobs? Like, to provide for the family. And I love, like I say, I love my job. I love working at sea. The sea, for anyone who works at sea, I know you've not been to sea, Arjun, but like, for anyone who has worked at sea, there is a draw, there's an absolute pull to it. Like, seeing those sunsets, those sunrises, that calm. Like, equally on the flip reverse, it can be absolute chaos. But it's chaos at home. So I don't know. Yeah, that's it was a new challenge for me, this one, because it's a brand new job. And so within January, February time, starting a new master's degree, starting a new job, like, new industry as well, because even though it's still the maritime industry, dredging is very different to the oil and gas, and to ferries, which is what I've done. So it's all a challenge, and I love to rise to a challenge. So yeah, just got to go and crack on and do it, eh?
Well, Heather, to be very honest, that's extremely inspiring to know. And if you could maybe shed more light, on how exactly does one go about balancing their parental duties alongside a very demanding career? Like, is there a formula to it? How did you go about it?
Yeah, formula is a supportive family back home. You have to have that supportive family back home. um and I get the fact that not all industries within the maritime industry work. Like, I personally wouldn't go deep sea or on the cruise ships unless it was, like, I know some cruise ships these days that they tend to work, they can work month on, month off, but a lot still do 3 months or 2 months. That's too long for me. So for me, how do I balance it? Well, I choose to work in the industries that have the shorter rotation. So oil and gas is relatively short. So certainly when I was on the rigs, that was 3 weeks on. Quite a few do 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. That is probably my limit. I wouldn't do that. Ferries, 1 week or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Now, 1 week on, 1 week off is too relentless. I can't. That's not enough. You need to be, because there's always travel days as well. It's too short a time, and my husband actually forbid me from working week on, week off. But no, dredgers again, 2 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, so they're perfect. That kind of job is perfect. Okay. And my kids do after school club on a Wednesday and a Thursday. They've got stuff going on in the evening, ballet, on a Friday. My boys are in nursery Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have an au pair who lives with us, who we schedule into our week. I'm fortunate that my mum is not that far away, albeit the reason we have au pairs now is because only like 18 months ago my mum was diagnosed with cancer, so she had to go through chemo, and of course she was pivotal to me being able to be away because she would look after my boy. And so, because at the time I only had the one son, I now have another. So I've made it harder for myself, but it's having that support back home. And my mum has always been supportive, and my husband champions me. And he knows that for the last 8 years I've had maternity leaves. Like, I've had 4 maternity leaves in the last 8 years. So he knows that my time is now, and he supports that. He really does, even if it is hard at times for him. And but when I'm home, I'm 100% home. Like, he doesn't have to. Well, he doesn't have to lift a finger. Of course, he has to lift a finger. But my point being, like, I'm there 100% of the time. Whereas if I was working at home 9 to 5, the girls would be in after school clubs every night and before school clubs. Like, we'd only see them at weekends and then a few hours in the evening. So I get to be present for 50% of the time. So that's how I balance it. And it's for me, it keeps me sane working, going back to sea. And hopefully it makes me a better parent when I am home, rather than having that stress level constantly high.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Heather. I think a lot of people who have children and still want to balance a demanding career, they can take a lot of insight and inspiration from your own anecdotal experience in this case. And they can see that one can be tremendously successful in their career while being equally present or trying their best to be, and say how important a supportive family structure can play as a key role, in facilitating this and in kind of being there as this sort of social background for people to have support while trying to strive to be their professional best. So that's
Yeah,
extremely insightful.
definitely. Now, obviously, we are all different. Like, different even industries within the maritime sphere. Like, I get the fact that people will be like, oh yeah, but I can't do that. I work offshore. I work deep sea. I work on a cruise ship or whatever. So there is always an element of compromise. There will always be an element of compromise, as a parent at sea. Like, either you're going to be away for a long time, or you're going to have to change industries, or like, something's got to give. But it is doable, and it's sustainable. Like, so I'm living proof of that, hopefully. So yeah. But I don't know how some people do it. Like, I know there's one of the mums that say, there's not many of us mothers that say, but she works on the cruise ships, but it works for her. So we are all different. And I know we're lucky that we can get an au pair. We've got the spare room to be able to have an au pair come live with us. And I know that I'm lucky that my mum is close enough to be able to help out. And she's retired, so she's got the time to help out. So there is that careful balance. And fortunately for me, like, we've got it balanced very well. So
Well, yes, Heather, and I hope we can have a growing community of mothers at sea who take inspiration from people who are currently there and are able to manage both the worlds very successfully.
hopefully.
Um, Of course. I remember one thing that you mentioned in one of our previous conversations, that networking has played a key role in terms of opening new frontiers for you, new opportunities for you, as well as, say, new even professional domains for you. So would you like to say shed some light on? how it's a good channel, and also how does one exactly go about networking? How does one do that?
Okay, yeah, no. So networking, you either love it or you hate it, or you're just very indifferent to it. Actually, possibly, or like you say, how do you get into it? So it helps to be part of like professional bodies or organisations, associations. So for instance, I'm a liveryman for the Honourable Company of Master Mariners. I am also a member of the Nautical Institute. Okay, and and various different things. I'm an ambassador for Careers at Sea. I go to London International Shipping Week when I can. Just there's lots of things that you can do, and I've always said it. The more you put in, the more you get out. And I will forever stand by that, even if I get laughed at for saying that. And I have been laughed at for saying that. But it's so true, because I mean, as liveryman of the Honourable Company, I'm a course assistant, so I get to go to course, and I get to vote on things, and I get to, again, that in itself is networking. And we have lots of the luncheons and the declaration days, and there's just absolutely all sorts, and they are just great for meeting people. And off the back of that, like, I will get messaged saying, oh, I've just been speaking to a young female who is considering it. Would you mind having a chat with them? Of course, I will always make that time, even if it's just 5 minutes after I've put the kids to bed. So I will always make that time for anyone like that. And like the doors it's opened. Like, I've been asked to be keynote speakers for fundraisers that I would never have been able to have gone to, because I can't justify spending like £150 for a plate for the evening, and then you've got the transport, the accommodation, the dress, like the shoes, so but I get to do that because I get asked or I get put forward. And even though I really, really don't like public speaking, I am finally getting better at it, I hope. And, I say yes to these things because it allows me to get in a room full of people and call like nonsense to them, and I nearly swore then. I won't swear. But I got to be on a panel at the IMEC conference, and there was a whole host of people in there, and like spouting off about diversity and inclusion. And I was just like, where is all this? Because I've looked at your websites, there's nothing, or there's very little, so. And you kind of, I get to be that person, without being outlandish or anything like that, and a nuisance. But I get to be that person who rocks the boat, because like, don't say that you're doing something when you're not, basically, because you will get called out for it. And I don't know. I don't know really where I'm going with this, but the point is, networking has just really allowed me to go to all sorts of things, meet lots of people, speak in the House of Lords, like, do all sorts of stuff, like. And like I say, the more you put in, the more you get out. And I think sometimes, even though I don't like a spotlight being put on me, if it's going to help other females or other parents in the industry, then I will rock that boat for sure, just to kind of get that message across.
That's fascinating, Heather. It seems like the primary components of networking, what I glean from your answer, is not being hesitant to being involved in professional bodies, in professional activities, and finally not being afraid to put yourself out there, regardless of, say, a tentative backlash or what one might perceive to be judgments. As long as one is out there, they're trying to grasp opportunities and connect with people they aspire to be like. That seems to be some key fundamentals of networking.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And like, I get it. Not everyone is an extrovert like me. Not everyone, but people connect with people in different ways. Like, and there's definitely room for the introverts in networking. I've met lots of them. I know lots of them. Like, and it's that collaboration that you get from them works really well. Like, and so yeah, don't write it off. Like, and we've got London International Shipping Week like this year, so check out the different events going on and what have you, so, because there is always something interesting going on, and like, we've got international, was it women's International Women's Day is coming up on the 8th, so there's lots of events going on, whether it's a Worcester events, whether it's, there's just absolutely all sorts going on. So there's definitely things that you can be, go to things if you're, especially if you're local, so yeah, why not?
Thank you for
You never
sharing
know
that,
where it
Heather.
might lead. Hey,
Of
you know.
course, of course. I think you also mentioned earlier that you've recently picked up some experience in dredging as well. And we just had a question come in from Mr. Olufemi who would perhaps like for you to expand a bit more on that, on your recent professional experience.
What, on dredging specifically?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I have been hired. Well, basically, I'm looking for a new job. I was approached by Heidelberg Materials, the managing director of for the marine section of Heidelberg, and like, he put to me this job. I'm basically a relief master. So they've got 4 ships in the fleet. I will have to go on all 4 and learn all 4. So it's no like small feat. And I've just only, Wednesday last week I got back, so I've been home a week after my first trip with them, and yeah, like I actually got to go into the office for a few days, which was great. I got to meet a lot of people, which is always nice when you get to meet people in the office, rather than them just be like a name on an email, So it was really good to actually get to meet people within the company. And then I got to join the ship. So I was on the ship for just over 2 weeks. And in that time, I did 10 dredges, which, I've never done dredging before, but straight off the bat, straight on the dredge site, there you go, Hev. Like, and so I'm there writing notes down, like, whilst doing it, and what have you. And it's actually quite addictive. Dredging. I don't really want to say that, because I'm still so fresh to it, but there's certainly, and they're all different ships as well, so they're all different dredging styles. So but for this particular ship that I was on, like, it was, yeah, I got to grips with it very, very quickly. I got great feedback about the product that we loaded, and then, yeah, I also got to do 18 maneuvers, so bring the ship in, take the ship out of ports in Dagenham, Greenhithe, and in Rochester. So it was incredible. Like that, in those 2 weeks, honestly, I did more ship handling than I think in my whole career. And so, yeah, it was a really, really good trip, really great crew, great cook who makes amazing cakes, which isn't so good for my waistline, but like, still very good. But yeah, no, it was amazing. Hopefully that answers your question. Maybe I just went off on a tangent there, but yeah, the plan for me is to be getting dotted around, and then when when the captain goes off, then I will just be able to step in, basically. And then when I'm not needed on the ship, then I might be in the office doing special projects. So yeah, all round, it's quite an interesting job.
That's very insightful, Heather. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope Mr. Olufemi found what he was looking for in his question. I would like to know one thing, that we know a bit more now about your professional side. We know a bit
Mhm.
more now about how you are managing the impossible task of parental duties and a demanding career. But
Yeah.
say we'd like to know a bit more about you personally. So what do you like to do when you're not working, or say managing other things? What are your
Oh,
hobbies like?
yeah, no, so I do a lot, and what do I do? So on a Monday, I go sing in a choir. So I'm part of a choir called Wellesbourne Sings. It's a community choir. We do 1 or 2 concerts a year, as well as a lot of the smaller, like, little functions, like the beer festival and what have you. So I sing. So a lot of music. I play the guitar, play the piano. I've just recently bought a banjo, as you do, and a viola. Although viola is just very, very similar to violin, so obviously I can play that. But so I do a jam session once a month, if I'm home, obviously, for it. So, which is a bluegrass and Americano jam session. And the guy who runs that, he also runs an open mic night, which is actually tomorrow night. So I'm possibly going to head over there. But I also do other crazy things, like, in fact, that's tomorrow as well. So a 2-week pottery course, so like a pottery throwing, like on the wheel, a bit of yeah, so making pots and what have you. So that's I'm just in the process of doing a 2 week session. So it's my second one tomorrow. So I've done a couple of taster courses for that. Very crafty, love painting. So and yeah, just apart from choir being week on week out, I like to dot my leave with like all these other things, like the jam session, like the pottery and what have you. So they're my hobbies. They're my hobbies, and I'd love to have more hobbies, but time is not on my side sometimes, um, so yeah, that's a bit about me, like it's just fitting it all in. It's that with and I know we're going to go on to the course in a minute, but all of it is all about time management, all of it, including the parental side, and it's just fitting it into your day. And I know people have laughed and joked and said, "I swear you're a twin or you're a triplet," because you do so much different things. And I'm posting about going to a school doing mock interviews or going to a careers fair doing things, or like in fact I was at a brownie so like guiding brownie a brownie meeting not that long ago, because they asked me to come and talk to them, and of course I'm in full uniform, and so I get to do all these things because I enjoy it, I'm passionate about it, and like I don't see it as a chore, but yeah, people do that, like, I swear there's three of you, because I don't know how you fit everything in, especially with the new job, especially with the degree, especially with the children, but I do, because you have to, because you crack on and do it because you enjoy it. So that's just me.
Well, that's extremely interesting, Heather. Somehow, along with parental responsibilities, extremely demanding work, you managed to have a very interesting life. And
Mm.
that seems very daunting for some people, to be honest. So
Yeah, well, I'll
that's
tell you
very
what, I
inspiring.
do it. I do it for my children. I know that so that they can see that it's doable. Like I want them to be surrounded by music. And in the summer, like my family love cricket. So hopefully that's going to come up again. Like providing we get it's very very popular, this cricket like club. But to try and get the kids onto that. So that's just something to like incorporate into it. But it's again, it's just time management. It's scheduling your week. But yeah, as long as they get to see the music side of things, the creative side of things, and see that actually it's still possible to do all that whilst juggling the family and having a great career, then hopefully, yeah, they'll grow up knowing that anything's possible.
Thank you for sharing that, Heather. I see that we've had some questions come in about, say, finding more about MLA College and your experience so far. So I'd just like to get started on. So currently, you're pursuing masters in sustainable maritime operations at MLA College. Could you just tell me a bit about what drew you to it, and say why did you decide to do a master's program right now?
Yeah, okay. Um, so the course itself. So I've always wanted to do a master's degree. I mean, after I finished at Plymouth University, you kind of think at some point, oh yeah, I'll top that up to do a master's degree. So I've always had that in the back of my mind. Now, I guess with my job, it's not necessary. Mike, sorry. Um, yeah, it's not necessary for me to do it, just purely because I've got my professional qualifications. I've got my officer of watch, I've got my chief mates, I've got my masters in limited. So I didn't really need to do the master's degree as well. But I think with anyone, like it's that joy of learning, isn't it? That's that the bettering yourself, the just more strings to your bow type thing. So, um, but why now? I guess with MLA, I know a few people who have done the course, like, and have rated it and what have you. And the fact that you're linked to Plymouth University, that's obviously close to my heart, like, because I loved being at Plymouth University. So, and still some of my best friends are in Plymouth, so I love coming down to Plymouth anyway. Um, and in terms of the actual course itself, sustainable maritime operations, like it's only going to get more and more. Just like with the sustainable development goals, and everything that's getting pushed for net zero, and and what have you. It's for me. I've always thought I'd be better if I kind of got on the forefront of it, and learn a bit more about it. it doesn't necessarily come naturally to me, like, and I've even got told I wasn't academic, so in theory, that according to that careers lady, I was never even going to get A levels, let alone a degree, let alone a master's degree, so I like proving people wrong. So there's always been that kind of like stubbornness in me as well as to why I wanted to go for that. But yeah, so that's the reason why that course. In Hang on, my husband leaves the room. Sorry. I did tell him not to come in, but he didn't listen. But never mind. But have I answered your question, or have I just gone on to another question there?
Oh no, I think it explains very well about what got you interested and why now would be a good time, say, to invest in master's education, even for someone who's extremely professionally accomplished, even for someone who has the top certifications. That an academic investment is never a wasted investment and rather helps one in their career trajectory. So just like kind of pushing off
So
from
why
there.
now? Yeah. So the reason why now is I think it was back in September. Um, there was an advert for some scholarships for women in maritime. And so, of course, like I say, it's always been in the back of my mind. So naturally, I applied for it. Now I didn't get it, but like I applied for it, and of course that then starts like, so I'd already done the application process, which was a simple process for doing. Um, and I'd got, as off the back of that, I'd got the what's the phrase? I got the acceptance, the
The unconditional offer.
thank you. Yes, I got the unconditional offer. So, and there's never a good time, especially with family. There's never a good time. So just make the time. That's why now. When it was offered to me to start in February, January time. Well, there is no right time, so yeah, why not? Let's do it. I'm coming to the end of my maternity leave. Let's do it. Let's go. So that's why. That's why now.
All right, Heather, and we're glad to have you on board, by the way. So, if you don't mind, could you also perhaps share any tips on from your own anecdotal experience, advice for other maritime professionals who may also be considering, say, investing in academic programs right now? Do you feel that you could say any tentative benefits on how that's a beneficial professional, decision?
Well, I mean, my biggest, like I said to you just then, like in terms of a tip, there's never going to be that right time. So, just if it's something that you want to do and you've been passionate about doing, or maybe you've got some topics in your head that you want to explore, um, that would be a good, for instance, dissertation topic, then why not? Like put it in. Certainly for me, when I was looking at the different modules, like there's a module on policies. Now, the idea of policy writing absolutely dreads me. Like it just doesn't actually, float my boat. Excusing the puns at all. However, what I am passionate about is the idea that I wasn't able to work on a ship because I was pregnant. And that wasn't the issue. The issue wasn't the fact that I was pregnant. They knew I was pregnant. But the issue was that they didn't have the manpower to create a policy and a risk assessment to allow me to work on board. And so it suddenly then became a little bit of a passion of mine to want to try and create this generic policy and risk assessment and have it available, whether that's through the IMO, through the International Chamber of Shipping, anywhere that is accessible for a shipping company to, if they suddenly find themselves with an expectant mother on board, to be able to be like, I'm not going to freak out. Okay, there's this policy, right, and now let's take that. We know it's going to fulfill the criteria of the insurers, and and they can then just amend it, bastardize it, like to be part of their company policies and their SMS. So that's what I want to go for. If I can leave this world, or this career, knowing that future mothers have not been kicked off, or and not been allowed to do a job because a company hasn't got that policy, because it's something that I've potentially created, then great. I would love to leave that legacy.
Thank you, Heather. It seems especially strongly now that from my own personal case, how companies investing in, say, academically informed policies might be a good route forward to ensure that there's inclusion and that there's the thought of including every person who would be a good tentative professional on ship, having their needs met and having their needs accommodated safely. So
Hmm.
thank you for making such a strong case on that. And building onto that, and I think this would be a key question for a lot of listeners, that you've recently just come onshore again. You were offshore for quite a while. And our MLA programs are specifically tailored to allow you to, say, learn kind of while you're actively working or sailing as well. So could you shed more light on how that experience has been for you?
Yeah, so actually, with regards to the lectures, like you pretty much download them, and so you can use that, you can watch them, offline and what have you. So doesn't obviously, it's all distance based learning, so you do it in your own time, which is why time management is key. Okay. The deadline dates for your assignments, and the draft submissions, so it's just factoring that in to your week, like setting aside so many hours, in your week. And it's not an unreasonable amount of hours either, um so it is very doable, like obviously the course was designed so that people could continue working, and the hardest thing that I found, and it's only an issue, is in fact it's not that much of an issue for anyone else, it's just for me, is like obviously if I'm away at sea, currently the ships that I'm on, I don't, I have to be in port to be able to send my and submit my assignment. um a little bit different now. My login has now come through, so I can actually access the Wi-Fi. But at the time when I had my first submission due, I was literally hotspotting off my phone, and so if we were about to leave port and I'm there trying to be like, I need to submit this, so I'm there, trying to get my 4G up, so that's literally been the hardest part for me, but that is unique to me probably. um Most people would probably be doing it, in the office or at home or somewhere where you have got easy access to Wi-Fi. And obviously a lot of ships, well, most ships, especially with the MLC clauses, have Wi-Fi. So, but it was just purely a login issue for me. That is why I couldn't access the Wi-Fi. But hopefully I won't have that issue next time. So, but yeah, no, otherwise everything's been absolutely fine. The course, the lectures have been great. They're quite short and snappy. They've got the write up for them, so if you prefer reading things as well as listening at the same time, you can, so it's yeah, it's been great.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Heather. I think just on the basis of internet connectivity, so all our modules, they are available for, say, offline download. So as long as they have access to the link, they can download it for the offline viewing as well. Of course, to share a certain submission, they would require to upload it on the portal. So yes, if there's pockets of internet access, that's extremely beneficial. But we do try to craft our programs to be offline as much as possible throughout
Mhm.
the academic journey for active seafarers, because we are very conscientious that internet might not be available throughout the journey, of course.
No, definitely. But and you can tell, like that, the way it's been set up, the portal and everything, it's definitely been set up for that. So yeah, it's good.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Heather. And we're getting quite a bunch of questions. One of them, say, being about, say, people who wish to transition from Royal Navy into more commercial operations. Would an academic program, in your own experience, or perhaps in terms of the people that you've met who've transitioned from the Navy as well, can it help them, say, launch into a more commercial career?
I mean, so I've just seen this. So, is undertaking an MLA course beneficial from transitioning from the Royal Navy, or would experience be enough? Um, it depends what you're doing. Like, you wouldn't be able to transition from the Royal Navy to the Merchant Navy in terms of being an officer on board the ship. You wouldn't be able to do that without having to go through the MCA and finding out if there's a transition course that you can do. But going into the maritime industry as a whole, the marine industry, then yeah, no, definitely it would be beneficial. Um, it's the maritime industry as a whole is massive. I mean, I'm the seafarer. So without us, you wouldn't have that. But um, there's so many different jobs that you could do, and this course, I would imagine, would be highly beneficial. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well,
I
thank you
haven't
for
worked with just the second part of that question. Have you worked with anyone who has transitioned from the Royal Navy into this field of work? Um, I actually do know a fair few Royal Navy people, but mainly through doing the Honourable Company. We've got quite a big RN contingent within the Honourable Company of Master Mariners. Um, and if I'm right in saying, I think even some people at MLA College are ex RN. So there are, yeah, definitely. But I don't think I've ever worked with anyone on a ship who has transitioned from Royal Navy to Merchant Navy without retraining. Um, I know there is a link, because I know some people who have done the other way around, so Merchant Navy to Royal Navy. There was a cohort recently where they've just kind of done that. But I don't know about the other way around. I'd have to look into that, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you for answering that, Heather. I'm sure our questioner would have found your answer insightful. And there is another question specifically, perhaps extremely relevant to you. That how do you see the role of women evolving in the maritime industry? We know that traditionally it has been considered to be a male-dominated profession, but fortunately now times have been changing. There have been more women entrants in both offshore as well as onshore roles. So, how do you see these roles evolving, and how do you see it specifically in terms of women gaining more leadership positions within the maritime industry?
Do you know what? It's an interesting question, that, because actually I don't see it. Like I see a lot of women in high positions, and maybe that's just because of my network. I'm not sure, but I feel like I know loads of people who are head of so and so, head of this, head of that, manager and director of this. On the board of trustees of that, and so maybe it's, like I say, maybe it's part of my networking that I do, but I know a lot of those ladies who are in big leadership roles. And there are task forces out there, like Women in Maritime Task Force with Maritime UK, for instance. And if you go onto one of those task forces, you will see actually a lot of these women, because we all connect, we all, and this is why, like I say, the more you network, the it's incredible where you kind of can get to, and who you meet. So I personally don't see that that we're not there, because I feel like we actually are there. We are infiltrating. Like, the ladies are getting up into the big managing spots. Now, as a seafarer, obviously globally, what, 2% female seafarers. Now, that's a different story. But in terms of women ashore in big roles, yeah, it's quite a decent percentage. It really is. So how do I see it evolving? Well, I just think we're just gonna, as more and more people connect, you will naturally see that there's actually quite a few people out there. And um, I don't know. I just think I'd like to see more female seafarers, if I'm honest. And I can see that there's another question here. Would you please say a few words inspiring the would-be women seafarers? We need more. And I don't think it's. Oh, now we're getting onto a whole new different topic here, Arjun. But how do you attract them? But if you don't even know what the Merchant Navy is, then unless you know family members who are in it, unless you live coastal, I live in the Midlands. This is how I fell into. So for anyone who didn't see the start, obviously I said that I fell into this career, and And a lot of people do, because the Merchant Navy isn't a well-known job, and I used to go on ferries, and yet I never made that connection. So it's just more about kind of getting the words out there. I will always be an advocate for careers at sea. I will always be a careers at sea ambassador, like going into schools, going into, like clubs and societies, and spreading that word, because without spreading that word, people are still in the dark. Now, the MNTB, so the Merchant Navy Training Board, and the UK Chamber of Shipping, like they've there's been this whole national campaign since October, which has been absolutely amazing, and we relaunched the Careers at Sea Ambassador program back in January last year, and I even I paid off my ship on Wednesday last week. I got on the train at Dagenham docks, and I sit down, and then suddenly I look up and there's a poster of a ship, and it was one of the Careers at Sea national campaign posters, which was incredible to see, because I got to be there for the launch day of it. And so it's really lovely to see it finally coming out, and seeing it in person, not just pictures of it. So it's just getting that word out there. And I know they've just announced only the other day that there's going to be a documentary about it, which is incredible. Actually getting footage on board a ship, seeing the females and the males, and just working the environment and everything, the excitement of it all. So I think it's great that they've managed to get this documentary, sorry. And so I hope it's a great success, because we need more people, to actually see it. So yeah, again, possibly didn't overly answer the question there, but like hopefully there's some takeaways there.
Thank you for that, Heather. It also seems that because there has been a rising trend of maritime influencers, people who are very active on social media, who are very keen to show their day-to-day operations, who are keen to show their aspects of the job, and now they're getting big in terms of, say, following. So there's a lot of visibility in terms of understanding more about the maritime career in general. Hopefully, this increased visibility, this increased awareness will trickle down into more active participation amongst people who may not traditionally have been very represented in the maritime sector.
Yeah, definitely, and social media will do that. What we do have to remember with social media, though, is that obviously with the algorithms, generally like for like see it. So it's actually the people who are not within that sphere, who aren't clicking on it, who aren't part of it, who aren't actually seeing it. So this is why it will always be imperative to get into the schools, to actually go and speak to people, not in a social media way. But social media is great. It's just, like I say, who's it actually reaching? Like if it's just going to the same people who are clicking on so this has always been my issue with the hashtags and the national days of, because we know, we see it, within the industry, we see it, because it's the algorithm. It's the people who are outside that who need to see it. And
Of
in
course.
my mind, the only way that we can get them to see it is if we bring them in and we go and talk to them first. So yeah, that's my little piece anyway.
Certainly, Heather. And of course, very active people such as yourselves who are passionate about spreading maritime awareness, maritime education, giving, say, advice. I know you don't like that word, tips, advice to people who may, be new or potential entrants into the profession. I found a very interesting question here amongst the list of questions, that if you had to give a younger self of yours advice about, say, starting a profession or considering a profession in the maritime domain, what would it be? It doesn't necessarily have to be singular, of course, but
No, if I could give myself one piece of advice, I would tell myself to go and learn my coal rigs quicker and my voyage. So failing points of your MCA orals exam is to do with the collision regulations and voyage. And I think as a cadet, I was there for the travel more than the learning, and I wish I'd put a little bit more into the learning at the time. And it's easier said than done. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but having the right people around you at the time, like, and the just even having that officer, that chief officer, like, who just takes an active interest in helping cadets, is just so important. But unfortunately, I sailed on some ships that didn't have that, like so. But those learning experiences are always something you will always take away. You sail with some amazing people, you sail with some awful people, like, but sailing with the awful people is just as important as sailing with the great people, because as an officer, or as especially as a cadet, thinking this is the kind of officer I want to be like, or this is the kind of officer I definitely do not want to be like, like, and you get nothing from being that person who says, well, that happened to me, so it's going to happen to you. No, you don't grow as a person like that. Like, you only grow as a person when you say, well, yeah, that happened to me, but I'm going to make sure it's not going to happen to you, so I'm going to put everything in, like, in my power that I can do to help you rather than hinder you. And that's so yeah, sorry, I just again went off on a tangent, but that's what I would do. I would tell myself to make sure that yeah, the syllabus is massive, so start early. And your collision regulations and buoyage, are definitely ones that you want to get down. So that that is what I want my career. But from a different point of view, so obviously that was, from the learning point of view. As a female cadet, times can be hard. Times can be very hard. Okay, so, and it's just knowing that you have someone who you can talk to. Okay, whether that's Safer Waves, the Sailors Society are about to launch a women's support, so 24/7, female support for female seafarers, and like having those places that you can reach out to, not suffering in silence, because even being in a box can be hard, especially if you're going through things, and that's without bullying, harassment, abuse, or anything like that. But like, even just missing things at home, your the birth of a baby, your wedding, you're like your sister's graduation, anything, it's hard because you're away from that all, and sometimes you do want to just scream into your pillow, and so no talking, like, I wish I'd talked more. Like, I mean, I talk a lot, but I wish I'd talked to the relevant people more when I needed it, rather than bottling anything up. So that's the advice that I would give my younger self. Reach out when need.
Thank you so much for that, Heather. And I hope that with, well-established people such as yourselves, who are so passionate about bringing about a change to ensure that more voices are heard, to ensure that more inclusion is there for all people across the spectrum, there will be change precipitated because of your active initiatives and others such as yourselves who are deeply involved in the same. So thank you so much for your efforts and on sharing that and your, personal journey, how it links with that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
If you don't mind, I'll just get back to one question about, the academic journey part,
Yep.
because this is something relevant to people who are considering, investing in education right now. That's it, based on your own experience so far, considering that you yourself are doing a master's course. Have you seen people have better career outcomes or better career dividends after having upskilled themselves academically?
I mean, I would say yes, and also, I mean, there's also the people who haven't gone on to advance yet they've managed to get themselves into some great positions. In fact, I was just looking at someone's LinkedIn profile, and they got their second mates, but didn't go on to do any other tickets and what have you. But then they've managed to go off on and have an amazing career with manager of this and manager of that. So, but there will always be those positions where they will always want you to have the degrees, the master's degrees, so the answer will always be yes, but there will always be the cases where you didn't need it, so, being completely honest, so it depends what job you're after. Because if it's, if it's some big wig, then yeah, you're probably going to need it.
All right, all right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So today, so far, we've known a lot more. We've had the honor of knowing a lot more about, your professional accomplishments, about your personal side, about understanding more about you as a person, about, your academic journey so far, and how you're managing to balance all these commitments, which you say time management is the fundamental principle underlying the same. So as we're getting closer to, the end of the webinar, are there any parting words? Is there anything you'd like to share?
I mean, we've covered a lot there, and obviously you've just put me on the spot, so that's
No pressure.
never no pressure. Um, I think it's just reiterating, like there is never a right time for these things, and if you have the opportunity to be able to do it, then why wait till next year? Just crack on and do it, like because you're only just pushing back time, like pushing back those opportunities, so and there's three intakes a year, two or
Yes,
three intakes a
three
year.
intakes. Yes.
So like don't push it. Why push it back anymore? Like just go for it. Whether it's May, whether it's September, like just go for it. Um, because you can always like defer and just say, look, can I do that module next time? Especially if like for instance, for me, I mean, not that I'm hopefully not going to do this, but the 6 weeks holiday, like when the children are off school, like am I really should I take that time then, to defer one of the modules? Like, well, maybe, like, I mean, hopefully not, but at least I have that option to be able to do that, so, that there is an element of flexibility in it. Um, however, from the stubborn side of me, I'm also like, no, let's get this done. Like I want to do it the quickest I possibly can. But that's just me. Obviously, we're all different. So yeah, just go for it. Just go for it. If it's on your radar of things to do, then I say why wait?
Ah, thank you so much for that, Heather. And thank you so much for bringing up the point about the study breaks that at MLA College, we do offer the option because our core principle is learn while you earn. We do not want people to have breaks from their careers while they decide to, invest in their education and upskilling. So we do provide the option of taking, say, study breaks between different modules so that if you have a very busy point in your professional or even a personal journey, you're able to balance that alongside your study. So we try to ensure that we work alongside the person's professional and personal plans rather than being this sort of block in the middle across which they should jump. So we do strive to do that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Heather. It's been a pleasure.
For having me. Thank you.
And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the session today. I would just like to share the fact that, as Heather just mentioned, we have three intakes every year. That is in January, May, and September. And right now, it is our May intake, which is right across the corner. So I would just like to emphasize that if anyone is keen to apply, it is the golden opportunity to apply because there's still ample time to go. And we ensure that we get back to you within a week itself with an outcome on your application. And moreover, we do have a variety of bursaries, scholarships, and discounts which are available based on your professional membership, based on your experience, etc. So please do not hesitate to contact me and to gain more insights from our students who set the path for other aspiring seafarers. So thank you so much, everyone.